Chapter 3 Files. It was Wednesday. Work had been absolutely knackering, so Hermione was celebrating Hump Day with Sebastian and a glass of chilled white. Sebastian was tall and well-built, and the author spent an enormous amount of time discussing his muscles, describing them as glistening on every other page. Hermione skipped past the part and focused on the heroine. She was young, brilliant, and had a sassy attitude that Hermione appreciated. An art student who just started selling her canvases for big money. The heroine, Felicity, was poised to move into the fast-paced world of international modern art. Felicity thought that was what she wanted, an unattached life of an acclaimed jet-setting artist, until she found herself drawn to the poet's soul of Sebastian, one of her naked male models. Hermione was going to bet that Felicity was going to reprioritize her life and give up her dream of traveling to settle down with the brooding and deep Sebastian. If it weren't for the hot and steamy sex scenes, Hermione would have thrown the romance novel into the trash. If the novel ended with Felicia finding fulfillment as an unappreciated housewife to an emotionally damaged Adonis, she was going to burn it. Sebastian had his hand under Felicity's shirt, and she could feel his turgid rod of manhood pulsing firmly against her jean-clad, curvy thigh, when there was a pounding at Hermione's door. "Damn it!" Hermione fumed, hastily stashing the cheap bodice ripper between the cushions of her couch. She had only just gotten home from work and was looking to unwind for the day. If it was Ron again, she was going to hex him. Wait. She had taken him off the wards. So who was at the door? A frown wrinkled her forehead. Whoever it was, they were in a foul mood, pounding forcefully on her door. Hermione grabbed her wand. "Granger!" Hermione paused, her hand on the doorknob. Snape? What on earth was he doing at her flat? Moreover, how in the devil did he know where she lived? Hermione purposely lived off the grid, and in Class 3 undetectable location. Only 4 people knew where she lived, and not even her parents had access to her address. But how'd he get through her impenetrable wards? She hadn't even felt them so much as waver. She pulled the door open, her wand out first in warning, her other hand still on the knob in case she needed to slam it in his face. "What is the meaning of this?" Snape spat, thrusting a parchment at her. "You know, it's impossible to read that with you waving it at me." She watched his teeth grind together as he handed it to her. Hermione wasn't inclined to open her door wider. It was perhaps a bit uncharitable, but she had a firm policy against allowing misbehaving jackasses into her flat, which was why Ron wasn't allowed over. Or at least, Ron wouldn't be allowed for another 2 weeks. By her internal calendar, that was how much longer it would take before he'd come to his senses and apologize. Snape pushed his way past her as she read and stalked her sitting room, treading the carpet like a prowling tiger. Her brows knit together as she read over the Gringotts document. "You can't make a withdrawal without me?" she summarized. "I'm a co-owner on your account?" "It would appear that I require your signature to move my account from its inactive state to its active state." "That makes no sense to me," she said, bewildered. Snape's lips were perked. "It's a joint account between me and my next of kin." Hermione scanned hastily through the document. The vault belonging to Severus Snape had automatically been placed in inactive status when he was incarcerated. As changing it back was not a routine request, it required her consent. If Hermione understood the paperwork correctly, she had full access to his accounts by their bloodline connection because she was his next of kin. There was that phrase again. "I don't understand," Hermione whispered. "Then it looks like we need to find out. Preferably now." Hermione glanced down at her baggy jumper and sleep shorts. Bugger. She just walked through the door and managed to put on comfy clothes. If they were going to make it to the Ministry Records Division before it closed, she was going to have to put robes on. "I'll need to get dressed," she muttered. "Sign first." He pointed forcefully at the Gringotts vault document in her hand, and Hermione nodded. A quick rummage produced a quill and inkpot. She hastily signed and watched as the document furled up on itself in a golden light and popped out of sight. Glancing from the corner of her eye, she noticed his sigh of relief. With ill grace, Hermione moved past him to her bedroom and hastily threw on her professional clothes. Snape raised an eyebrow. Was it just her, or did it look like an appreciative eyebrow? Ooh, down, girl, Hermione thought. With an extra helping of flue powder for Snape, she called out her destination. The march to the Ministry's records was terse and only punctuated by the sticky, sweet voice of the lift announcing their descent. In the lowest sub-basement of the sprawling Ministry complex was the record division. They were greeted by a young woman who had prematurely aged far beyond her years. It seems that the Ministry employs Dementors here as well, Snape muttered after sending the clerk tottering off after his requested records. Working here will do that to you, Hermione responded. When she graduated, Hermione had taken a short summer internship at the Ministry to gain much-needed experience for her curriculum vitae. That singular experience did more to convince her to take an apprenticeship than all the counseling sessions with her head of house. In one short summer, all her dreams of working towards house elf rights with the regulation of magical creature division were stamped under the foot of bureaucratic reality. Oh gods, Hermione realized with a start. The nameless bedraggled clerk was Tracy Davis. Poor thing. They'd requested their personal files and cross-referenced it with the genealogy papers. Tracy returned with a fully loaded, squeaking cart pulled behind her. There's too much to sort through, Hermione bemoaned, flipping through her third fat folder. Each folder was stuffed with handwritten ministry notes that followed her wizarding career exploits, shuffled in a nonsensical pattern. The Big Brother state kept records on her every movement, no matter how tedious. They can't possibly need all this information. She eyed the results of her last pap smear in askance. It was included with an updated report on her fertility and reproductive likelihood, penned by a C. Travis, who tracked ink all over the document. Lovely. Somewhere, C. Travis knew more information about her uterus than she did. As much as it would please me to say this is make work for people, they do actually review this information. Nothing is more important to them than bloodlines. Whereas Hermione had started with the initial entries of her childhood, he'd started at the beginning of the record's timeline. Severus sculled through lineage charts so detailed the College of Arms would have been jealous. They both shared progenitors who'd been decreed as Roundheads. Otherwise, he couldn't find a connection to his cursory examination. Though sorting through centuries of history would take a significant investment in time. Tracy wheeled in another cart. School records, she mumbled, unloading an armful of folders. I just don't see how we can be next of kin, Hermione stated. We have nothing in common. You're married, Tracy mumbled, dragging the cart behind her. Severus' head shot up. Hermione gasped. Miss Davis, repeat that, Severus ordered. She owlishly blinked and slowly repeated. You're married. The paperwork arrived just a bit ago when you both signed a contract acknowledging your responsibilities to each other, and we're closing in half an hour. Before shuffling off, they both reached for the newer folders at the same time. Severus quickly flipped through and discarded the records of his incarceration and release. Hermione breezed her way past descriptions of heroism and grievous disruptions to the fabric of wizarding society that included a picture of one lonely, wayward Gringotts dragon. Sorting together through the random assortment of documents thrown into a file folder without any thought to organization or relevance. They both stumbled at the same time upon a parchment with the singular title of betrothal. Hermione's hands were clammy and shaking, so she stared over his shoulder as Snape began to read. The language was archaic, belonging to another time, and certainly not how she would choose to write a betrothal, hers or otherwise. Hermione strongly suspected that, if a quill and bottle of red ink presented itself, they'd fight over who got to correct it. She read on, scanning for a clue. Something, anything, that made sense. At the end she found it. The final paragraph's notation stated that the parties hitherto had been entered into such a contract on the consent of their legal guardians. I think, he said tersely, it's time for us to speak to the department's head.